Please remember to subscribe, like, and share.
All right, and welcome back, everybody. Chris here. I got Scott here with me today, and is it Imad or Imad? I always say your name wrong.
Imad, yeah.
Imad. Yeah. I'm sorry, man. I always get that wrong, and I don't know why. So we're going to talk about something or cover some topics a little different today. I mean, so often people talk about the magic bullet and the bag and so on and so forth. So let's start off with after the shooting. Maybe like we hear conspiracy theorists say all the time that the crime scene was not properly taken care of. They was out there washing the limousine and getting rid of evidence. Is that what happened? I mean, you see that picture with the guy looks like a bucket of water. What's taking place there? Amon?
Yeah, it wasn't a bucket of water. Does the picture actually show water in the bucket?
No.
No, there's just a bucket there. They once they were at the hospital, they went to fix the top onto SS-100X. So my understanding was that there was some debris that had to be cleared out of the hole to put the sunroof on the car. I mean, obviously today we know they should not have done that. They should have done everything they could have to preserve the integrity of the crime scene. But, you know, it was the 1960s, man. People did things differently back in those days.
I mean, because if they was cleaning the car, then that would mean that those two Dallas police officers were involved in some type of conspiracy, right?
Well, I don't necessarily think that those things are mutually exclusive. Like, I don't believe that because the car was cleaned, that means there was a deliberate attempt to destroy the evidence in the car. It could have just been that they don't want people seeing the president's blood and brains splattered all over the place, right? But I don't think the car was, like, actually clean, because we have the photos of it when it returns to DC. And there's still all kinds of blood and biological material all over the back seat. So I think they just kind of cleaned out the holes that you have to mount the sunroof on, just to put the roof on the car to kind of hide it from public sight sitting out back in the parking lot at Parkland Hospital, you know?
The problem with conspiracy theorists is that they live in a world where everything has to work like a Swiss watch.
Good point.
People don't screw up. There are no coincidences. There's just no room for fudge factors, inefficiency, things like that. I mean, the FBI, the CIA, the Secret Service, all of them, messed up badly during this whole scenario. I mean, but what? I mean, what do you actually have to see something sinister in that? I mean, this is what I'm trying to say. Like, we know, for example, that the Secret Service men were out drinking up to like 3 o'clock in the morning, and that's a fireable offense. Okay, and then they try to cover their asses after that. But that's not something sinister.
Those guys. I'd like to say something about that. I've told that some of them had different hours to come in, but think about it too. Those guys were 25, 30 years old, tip top shape. Staying out drinking until 3 o'clock in the morning, that wasn't going to affect those guys. I mean,
oh yeah, I remember when I was in high school, me and my buddies, we went on a trip to Europe, and we were getting like shit faced every night and stumbling off to bed as the sun was coming up, and we'd bounce out of bed like 3 hours later and go walk around the city all day, go sightseeing,
Yeah, and this was midday, so I never really thought much about that. See,
the point I was getting at was that even if the cops were out there washing the limo, doing things that they shouldn't have been doing, that violates the protocol, that doesn't necessarily imply anything sinister.
No,
as Scott said, this was 1963. The process is now you wouldn't dream of doing something like that.
No,
I doubt you could even
yellow tape
the way Kennedy was assassinated.
Yeah,
the kind of protocol that they have. But yeah, I mean, people screw up. That's just the way it is. That's just the way the world works. I'm sorry, it doesn't.
Yeah,
work
I've seen something. while back that said like if Biden wanted to walk down the street or something, like in Daily Plaza, that there would be hundreds of snipers set up all over. As soon as a window went up or something, they'd be all over.
Exactly.
Nothing
Yeah,
like that.
today it would be totally different. But another thing that conspiracy theorists do is they also discount the human element,
Good point.
Dave Powers and Kenny O'Donnell are there. Dave Powers and Kenny O'Donnell knew JFK back from when they were kids, back from when they were teenagers in boarding school.
Yes, that's right. I remember
And it's
that.
like, if your boy just got wasted and his brains are splattered all over the back of the car, that's your boy, man. You don't want people seeing that. You don't want
Right.
people gawking at your friend's
Yeah.
brains lying on the
Yeah.
floor of the car, So you tell them, hey, cover this up, put the top on so people don't see this horrible, gruesome scene here,
Yeah.
Because I have seen the photographs of the limo when it arrived back in DC. It's pretty gruesome. There's a lot of blood in the back of that
Yeah.
car, man.
There is.
Yeah.
There is.
I don't think I've ever seen that, but I bet there was. I mean, just the spray, So, my next question, we hear this a lot too. I mean, the body was illegally moved from Texas. Because that time it wasn't a federal law to kill a president. I mean, so
No,
was it
but there is a federal law about killing a federal government official, and I think the case could be made that as the president of the United States, the president is the federal official, right? So, I mean, if you want to get really technical, they could have tried to do something like that. But they had permission to take the body to another jurisdiction to conduct the autopsy from the local justice of the peace, and any evidence gathered from that autopsy could have been used in a Texas trial against whoever. So, I mean,
what was it, Dr. Rose?
Yeah.
Did they push him aside with weapons drawn, or is that just myth?
I know they pushed him aside, and I don't know if weapons were drawn. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't, but I bet you at that point, Secret Service has had enough of Dallas and they're getting out of there. And if they have to push people aside and pull out weapons, then that's what they're going to do. They have the legal authority. They got permission to take the body to another jurisdiction for the autopsy from the local Dallas official who has the authority to do that. So the Secret Service is in the right. They are going back to DC with the new president and the former president's remains. There's no way Lyndon Johnson is going to leave Dallas without Jackie Kennedy. He can't do that. And there's no way Jackie Kennedy is leaving without JFK. She's not going to do that. So again, it's the human element, right? The instruments of government and justice recognize that, and they said, okay, we're going to let you take it to another jurisdiction for the autopsy.
Which
What's
brings
your
up
take,
an
Mom?
interesting point, Sorry to interrupt. But okay, so if so Lyndon B. Johnson was not a mind reader, okay? So he wanted Jackie to attend the swearing-in ceremony. What if Jackie has said it's fine, I'll just attend the ceremony, my husband can stay here, right? Then what would have happened? The autopsy would have been done in Dallas at Parkland. So now if conspiracy theorists are to be believed, there was a fake autopsy done at Bethesda, right? So how would they have done a fake autopsy? Would there have been a fake autopsy team in Bethesda as well as Parkland or Walter Reed? Because the decision to get it done at Bethesda was taken in mid-flight. They were over DC by that time. Admiral Berkeley asked Jackie, "Would you like the autopsy done at Bethesda or at Walter Reed?" And she said that no, my husband was a Navy man, so I'd like it done at Bethesda. So now, I mean, if this whole fake autopsy scenario is correct, then they would have had 3 teams of autopsists ready to do a fake autopsy at 3 different locations. Do you see how absurd that gets?
And I'd like to point out something Scott said a while ago too. One thing they're not keeping in mind maybe it was, wasn't a federal law, but federal trumps state. So they they had the right to take it. The way I see it, they're taking it back to DC. So on the flight back, what happened? I mean, was the body altered? I mean, the Navy corpsman says the brain's missing. I mean,
No, the body was never unattended. It was never unattended. Even
except
when,
for
when
she went
Dave,
to.
no, she went to stand next to Lyndon Johnson. Dave Powers and Kenny O'Donnell, his two best friends, stayed behind.
Right.
They're good Irish boys, man. They're not going to leave their friend's body unattended. It's just not going to happen, From the moment there was never a moment when Kennedy was alone. And I mean, if you're going to alter the body, one, that's not possible. It's not possible to do that in a way that will remain undetected. And two, there's not enough time. There's no moment where he's left alone, but you don't need a moment. You need like hours and hours and hours to do that,
Exactly. I mean, because there was I think it was like a 5 minute gap when Jackie actually had to go and use the restroom. But what is 5 minutes going to give these people,
Even
right? I mean, well, what are you going to do in 5 minutes? You're going to abduct the body in 5 minutes?
even then, I don't think the body was unattended because Jackie wasn't sitting there alone with the casket. Dave
No.
Powers and Kenny O'Donnell were there with her. They were JFK's best friends,
So what about the second casket? Didn't they put him in a bronze one, and he showed up in a silver one or something like
Well,
that?
if O'Connor is to be believed, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean,
What
you
would be the
you only
point
have
of
his
that?
word for it, right?
Why would a conspiracy need to use two caskets? What would the point in that?
it's just yet another example in the conspiracy theorist narrative of the conspiracy simultaneously in some ways being omniscient and omnipresent and in other ways being bumbling and inept. They're so perfect that they could kidnap the body, somehow alter it to make it look how they want it to look, having those alterations go entirely undetected on a dead body, mind you, and then they accidentally put it back into the wrong casket and Paul O'Connell was there, or they forgot to put his brain back in and Paul O'Connell happened to see that or something. It's just nonsense. They plant the right shells in the sniper's nest to frame Oswald, but then they plant the wrong gun. It's nonsense.
Well, I remember you saying that when you watched the London trial, he was depressed when they came back and convicted Oswald. You seen Paul's testimony. What did you think of it?
Me, I actually don't recall that in detail.
No,
I'll throw that
Paul was.
question
He
to
said that last
Ahmad.
time. I mean, I see. Ahmad said that last time, and he watched it real close. And he was depressed when it came out. So I'm sure you watched it real close. Did you think he was believable, or?
Well, he sounds believable, but a few things that Bugliosi asked him. So, like, a couple of things he asked him. So one of them was, why did you not testify before the House Select Committee on Assassinations? Why did you not mention this to the House Select Committee? And he said, I was under orders.
I recall that.
Yeah, he was under orders not to talk about it. So when was there an expiry date to these orders? So if he was under orders, why is he talking now? Was there an expiry date to when, he could start talking again?
Huh.
Like
I never thought about that.
as a military officer, you can be given orders, but you cannot be given orders to violate the law. Like a
Sure.
military officer cannot be told, go to these people's houses and murder them. And then you go there and you do that, and you're like, well, I was just following orders, If a lawful court is compelling testimony from you under oath, your military orders are no longer valid in those circumstances.
Because this is an astonishing omission. The brain missing from the president's body, and you did not select or you did not testify before the HSCA. What does that tell you? You know,
Or the
Well,
Ramsey panel either, right?
where where did the brain that the Bethesda pathologist examined come from then? If the body had no brain when it arrived at
That's a
Bethesda,
good point.
they
I didn't
weighed
even
it.
think about that.
They weighed the brain.
yeah, and
Yeah,
they
I remember that.
commented on it, and they drew like diagrams of the damage to the right hemisphere of it. So I mean, obviously they examined some brain, right?
Who picked the three doctors to do
The
that?
Well, Jackie picked Bethesda, so it was going to be the Navy pathologists at Bethesda who were taking the lead. But they also requested, I always pronounce this guy's name wrong, Frick, to
It's
join
Finch.
them.
Yes.
Or Fink or Finch. I think it's Fink.
Think.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he's an army doctor, but he
He
is
he
well
was a
regarded.
lieutenant colonel.
Yeah, Colonel Fink.
He's well regarded in the field of wound ballistics. So these two Navy pathologists, Humes and Boswell, they request he attend this autopsy and participate with it. And his name is on the autopsy report too. So really it's a joint effort. You know, there was an army pathologist there.
But none of these guys had experience with gunshot wounds, right?
No, that's entirely false. Uh,
Really?
Dr. Dr. Finch is noted for his work in the field of wound ballistics. He has a lot of experience with gunshot wounds. Commander Humes, in the fall of 1963, is rotating back to the United States. He has recently completed a tour of duty aboard the USS Saratoga. The Saratoga is a hospital ship operating as part of this fleet in the South China Sea, assisting with Vietnam. And in the course of his tour of duty there, Commander Humes performed numerous autopsies on American personnel who had been killed by gunshot wounds in combat. The idea
Uh,
that these guys had never performed, had no experience with gunshot wounds is just outright false.
Ahmad, why didn't they dissect the bullet wound?
Well, they didn't perform a proper autopsy in the sense that they did not perform a full autopsy, okay? In a full autopsy, you're supposed to do everything. You're supposed to shave the head, you're supposed to do like toxicology tests and stuff like that. I don't know if they did toxicology tests on Kennedy or not, but I know for sure they didn't shave the head like you're supposed to, right? In order to dissect the track of the bullet wound, where the wound is in their body, they would have to cut through the strap muscles and the neck. And at that point, you're pretty much going to have to cut the guy's head off. And I can understand why the pathologists would be hesitant to do that.
What do you think, Ahmad?
Yeah, no, I agree. The Kennedy family was very sensitive about the whole thing, and this probably explains also the so-called missing brain. So a full autopsy where his head was shaved or his head was cut off. I mean, that would not have been in good taste
I
at the
mean,
time.
I hate to quote Oliver Stone here, but I mean, during the incident, shouldn't they have explored every possible cause of death if that bullet had killed him first? I mean,
Yeah, but that's what you do at a normal autopsy, right? You explore every possible cause of death. That's why you take a blood sample. That's why you take toxicology reports. That's why you shave the head to look to make sure that the hair on the head isn't covering any other injury that could have led to that person's death. But in this case, it's not just any person, it's the president, and you have the grieving first lady and the president's family in the presidential suite at the top floor, and every hour, 90 minutes, Dave Powers, Kenny O'Donnell, Robert Kennedy is coming down to the basement being like, hey, when are we going to be done? When can we get out of here? We got to take this guy back to the White House. And they were allowed to exert external pressure on that autopsy, albeit unintentionally and indirectly, that they never should have been able to do. That's another thing that came out of the HSCA was recommendations for how things like this should be done in the future. And they said, in the future, you shouldn't let the grieving first lady decide where the autopsy is going to take place. In the future, you shouldn't let them come to the hospital where the autopsy is going to take place.
Well, Ahmad, were they under orders? Were these doctors under orders from the FBI, Secret Service?
Yeah, I don't think they were under orders. It's I'm sure the FBI and whoever were supervising the whole thing. I mean, they come out with this story about this cigar smoking Air Force general who was there and who was ordering
Yes,
people around. And
I
apparently
remember that.
yeah, that's a reference to Curtis LeMay. And
Well,
the story came from Fink himself.
was it?
But
Well,
you,
what about the
but
older doctor there?
well, there may have been a cigar smoking general, but
Well, but
see
no,
the
if you
first thing.
remember, there was they asked who's in charge here, and the guy said, "I am." And but this guy actually wasn't smoking; he was sitting back. And I remember, and I'm going by the movie here, so don't know that. But he said he was not a qualified pathologist. So who was do we know who was actually in charge of this autopsy?
Commander Humes.
Commander Humes.
All right. Ahmad,
And I mean,
why didn't he burn his autopsy notes?
Why? Oh, yeah. So that's another thing. Because it was splattered with blood.
Commander
That's the
Humes,
unique thing.
as a young boy, he had seen a traveling exposition of like famous historical artifacts, and one of those objects was the chair Abraham Lincoln had been seated in when he was shot, and the
Really?
backrest of the chair was stained with blood. And Commander Humes, as a young boy, saw that at some state fair or something, and he always remembered that. So when fate and circumstance led to him having a similarly macabre historical artifact, the original autopsy notes stained with the president's blood, he flashed back to that memory of seeing the chair stained with Abraham Lincoln's blood. And he's like, you know what? I don't want to leave something like that behind for future generations to see. So he transcribed his notes onto a clean sheet of paper and destroyed the originals.
Yeah. What would be the point of making up autopsy notes that describe it one way and then burning it and making new ones? I mean, wouldn't you just do it while you were making them out? I mean, I always
Yeah,
thought
exactly.
it was a
If you're gonna
traumatic.
fake it, just fake it,
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, if the whole thing was okay, so why would he even admit that he burned his notes if he was part of a conspiracy?
Exactly.
So when would
You know,
this?
all he had to do was lie and say, "Oh no, these are my original autopsy notes. I didn't burn anything."
Yeah.
How would these doctors, how would they have altered the body? Because the head wound was altered. How would they have done that? I mean,
They couldn't have. It's not possible.
now, how do you put brain, build scalp back together? And
Exactly. And how do you fake it in such a way as so that fakery will escape detections when they do x-rays? Like if you're actually faking that, why would you even have an autopsy photographer there to begin with?
I believe after rigor mortis sets in and the body starts stiffening, you can't really make that many alterations. I mean, that's what I'm not an expert on this, but that's what I heard. I wish my dad was around to tell me because he was a physician.
oh,
He,
really?
yeah,
Wow.
he did a lot of surgery, so he would have known. But
If there was a conspiracy in the autopsy room, you wouldn't have a room full of people, would you? I mean, you just have
yeah,
you
Oh,
right? I
I
mean,
brought that up on our forum one time. I said because if you listen to Paul O'Connor's testimony, there was total chaos there. Hundreds of people just milling around, everybody talking over each other, blah blah blah. So is that really a place where you'd want to do a fake autopsy? Come on, man. Seriously.
and while we're at it, let's get an army doctor in here to assist us in faking the autopsy. That way it makes the conspiracy even harder. Now it's not just the Navy that has to cover it up, it's the Army too.
Yeah, and the point that I wanted to bring up with the cigar smoking Air Force general was this. I mean, the implication there is that was Curtis LeMay. Now, Colonel Fink was an Army man. He would have known Curtis LeMay by name, by face. Curtis LeMay was a war hero. He
Right.
was a household name in the United States by the 1960s. You know, he participated. He played a major role in the bombing of Germany and Japan during World War II.
Mhm.
And yeah, he did smoke cigars. But I mean, would Colonel Fink not have mentioned him by name? Would he not have recognized who this person was?
And why would an Air Force general be trying to give orders to Army and Navy personnel inside a Navy facility? You know, it's like how would the Secret Service or the FBI, for that matter, been able to control an autopsy being done at a Navy facility? You think high-ranking Navy personnel on Navy property are going to take orders from the Air Force or from the FBI or Secret Service?
Because the listeners out here are going to be going, but they did away with the brain. I mean, they disposed of the brain, so they couldn't tell which direction the shot was from. It
Well,
destroyed up.
here's the thing about that claim or any other claim. If the claim can simply be dismissed as, well, this person could have just made that up entirely, dismiss it that way. You know what I'm saying? If somebody could have just made something up, then they could have just made it up. And it's like, I don't have to believe anything that somebody claims that they could have just made up, you know? Obviously, they examined a brain. And in our discussion about the body in transit back to DC, there was never a time where they could have even gotten to it to remove the brain. So none of it makes sense. None of it's rational or logical. Dismiss
After
it.
that, they waited. They got rid of it, right? I mean, they had to hide this brain. They could not see where the shots came from. I mean, right?
He was hit in a moving car.
Yeah, but
Like,
why? I mean, they're
it's
very
gonna
young.
spray everywhere, you know?
I mean, could it be that maybe that there is truth that his brother didn't want everybody looking at his brother's brain that shot to pieces? I mean, that would make sense to me why they wanted to get rid of it.
Well, I mean,
I mean,
they're
not, I'm
his
not.
family. They want to inter his remains together. When Kennedy was first buried, he was buried at a temporary site while the permanent site was constructed. A couple years later, not a couple years later, like a couple months later, when the construction was done, they moved him to that permanent site in the dead of night. And there are photos of Robert and Teddy at the
Mhm.
gravesite as they're moving the casket. And
Yeah.
with them is a wooden box. And it's been proposed that that wooden box contains the brain, it contains the other biological samples that were taken during the autopsy, and that when the president was reinterred in his final resting place, these items were reinterred with him so that he could be together and rest in peace.
Well, the story goes that Kennedy had suffered from Addison's disease
Right.
for a very long time. And this is something the Kennedy family, especially Bobby, did not want leaked out to the public. So this is something that would have been covered by a full autopsy and an examination of the brain. So
Um,
politics played a part in this too.
oh,
Absolutely.
we've got that, but we've got, another cover up too. On why was Oswald denied a lawyer, and why was he not allowed, legal representation? He begged for
He wasn't denied a
He wasn't.
lawyer.
That's
It's
just a lie.
it's 1963. 1963 is before Arizona v. Miranda. Nowadays, they give you your Miranda rights typically right when they arrest you. But the Miranda warning, it's for people who are about to be interrogated. So prior to, I think Arizona v. Miranda was 1967. Prior to that, there was no requirement for law enforcement to give you your rights, to tell you these are your rights. You
it.
have the right to remain silent, et
You,
cetera,
you
et
can
cetera.
find it on YouTube where I think his name's Joseph Nichols, who's head of the Dallas bar, who went and met with Oswald and offered him an attorney. I think his name's Nichols, I want to say. He met with the press and said he met with him. He refused an attorney. He wanted Apt from New York to represent him. And
why does he want Apt? Because Apt is famous for having defended communists in the past. He's a political lawyer. Lee Harvey Oswald wants a political lawyer because this is political. He killed the president for reasons of political ideology.
He was probably trying. Oswald probably wanted to use his upcoming trial as a sort of a stage, a sort of a platform for propagating his ideology or whatever, you know. And
the circus show that would have been.
Who better to represent you than a communist lawyer, right?
But I mean,
exactly.
But they silenced him. You know, the Dallas police let him out, didn't provide security, let Ruby in and shoot him. I mean, why did they do that?
They didn't let Ruby in. He snuck in, you know. But I mean, again, it's 1963. I remember when we were in Dallas last time, I was talking to Frank Balderson, and I told him that I have this memory from something I saw on TV a long time ago. I saw it as a little kid. It was one of those made-for-TV movies, and I can't remember who it was about. I think it might have been about Ted Bundy. But anyways, in this made-for-TV movie I saw, the police had a high-profile suspect in custody, and they were about to take him outside to transfer him somewhere. So the police stopped him, and they go, "Okay, raise your arms." He raises his arms, and they slip a bulletproof vest onto him. And he asks them, "What's this for?" And the police officer putting on it laughs, and he says, "This is for your protection. Remember Oswald?" Forever after, you have the example of Lee Harvey Oswald. That's why you don't do things like that anymore. The assassination of JFK, that's why we don't do things like that anymore. The sinking of the Titanic, that's why we don't do things like that anymore.
This was a tsunami. I mean, they were not prepared for the press. Nobody was prepared for this.
No. Could you imagine in this day and age a police force saying to the press, "Oh yeah, we're going to move the suspected assassin of the president of the United States at this time, so make sure you're here so you can get the pictures you want"? Are you crazy? You think today the police would have the world's media clogging up the corridors of their headquarters while they're investigating this very serious crime? No way, man. It was a different world back then.
You know, one thing I've always asked conspiracy theorists, and they always come up with lame excuses for this. If they wanted to silence Oswald, the best two places to have done that would have been at the Texas School Book Depository and at the theater where he was arrested.
Or they would have found him hanging
Simple
in
as
his
that.
cell.
He was resisting arrest, for God's sake.
I mean,
Why are
you
him hung in his cell the next day?
Yeah, or shanked in the shower, right? Like, why are you guys going through all the hassle of having to plant all this fake evidence? Like, obviously, you've compromised the police force if you have them planting fake evidence. Why don't you just compromise one of them enough so that he can kill Oswald at the book depository? You know he's going to come down the stairs. Position yourself in such a way as so he has to pass by you. When he gets there, force a confrontation with him and shoot him. Hero cop Scott Maudsley kills suspected presidential assassin. Hero cop to receive key to city in ticker tape parade Monday morning, you know?
Yeah, I'd like to say this right here too, and you can see the shock on his face. But I mean, if somebody told you we're silencing him and you're going to be handcuffed to him, what would your reaction be?
Fuck no, I'm not. Get somebody else to do it. I'm not going to handcuff myself to the guy you're about to light up.
I mean, and that was his natural reaction to try to pull him back. But I've read some people say that had Lavelle not pulled him, the bullet would have hit him differently, and he might have survived that shot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah, I mean, this was actually, I mean, if you listen to the two doctors who operated on Oswald, this is exactly what they said. They said the fact that he got a flanking shot, right, which cut through his vital organs. This pretty much spelled his his doom. That was his death sentence, right? If he had taken a frontal shot, it's very possible they could have saved him. They had a more
I
than a
always
50%
thought
chance of
basically like
saving
when
him.
the envelope open.
What's that?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I read one of, I think it was in Crenshaw's book, actually said it was like cutting an envelope open the way it went down and hit all of his organs. So,
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, that one round did a lot of damage, but he was right up on him, you know? That's
and,
point blank range.
and they did everything they worked on him for a long time. I mean, I think he actually died of cardiac arrest. I mean, they came very close to saving him.
Yeah. They for want of like him getting to the hospital maybe like 90 seconds sooner, maybe they could have saved him. Who knows?
Well,
Yeah, but see how
didn't-
circumstantial the whole thing is, right? So we have this guy who's supposed to silence Oswald. He works for the mob or whoever. For some reason, he doesn't shoot Oswald in the head or in the heart, but he aims right at his stomach. And
good point.
if it hadn't been for Lavelle tugging at the handcuff, Oswald would have taken a frontal shot. Probably have had a more than a 50% chance of surviving. And if he survived, he would have blown the lid off the whole conspiracy. The whole thing is so absurd, you know.
Well, I mean, he's already been in police custody for 48 hours. I mean, he's already had plenty of opportunities to talk to the Dallas Police, the Secret Service, the United States Postal Inspector, the FBI, the Texas Rangers, whoever. I mean, how does the conspiracy know he hasn't flipped already? And it's too late to get to him now, you know?
Good
Yeah,
point.
exactly.
Well, what about LBJ? Didn't he call the hospital demanding a deathbed confession?
I don't know if that's true or not, but
I
I
don't
mean,
believe that.
even if he did, so what? What difference
I
does
mean,
that
but
make?
yeah, I read that in Crenshaw's book, and I mean, I'm sitting there trying to picture it: a nurse coming in saying, "Hey, is he's desperately trying to save his life? You got a phone call?" But I'm a little busy right now. You can tell the president he can
Yeah,
call back. I just
Well,
don't see a doctor walking out.
the thing is that even if that story is true, that actually tells like that actually counts against a conspiracy, not for a conspiracy. If there was a conspiracy, then why would LBJ want a deathbed confession from Oswald? What if
Ah,
Oswald, on his deathbed confessed that there was a conspiracy and that he was set up and he named such and such a person, and
like
just blown the lid off the whole conspiracy? Like, why would LBJ insist on a confession? That shows it wasn't a conspiracy.
and
I
I
doubt
mean,
it happened to begin with, but even
I
if
don't
it
believe
did,
Crenshaw.
I don't believe it happened either. But if he's conscious and lucid enough to give a deathbed confession at that point, why would he? You know, like if he's already almost dead, the conspiracy has already almost succeeded in killing him. What motive do you have to protect it then? You know?
And I don't know exactly what was taking place at that time, but I imagine LBJ was pretty tied up with stuff going on regarding his funeral. I mean, because I know that went on for a long time. I just don't see him going back, making a phone call, and Crenshaw taking it.
Crenshaw said a lot of things, but I mean, like I said earlier, if you can dismiss something with simply he just might have made it up, then dismiss it that way, you know? Is there any proof outside of what Crenshaw says that that phone call ever took place? If the answer to that question is no, then he could have just made it up, so dismiss it.
So, what about the cover up by the Warren Commission?
I don't think there was one.
Can they cover
if
up
anything,
Mexico City trip?
if
It's
anything,
too
they went out of their way to exonerate a lot of people. And I mentioned this before, right? I think we discussed this too, right, Scott? I said
yeah.
that if the whole idea was okay, so like I mean, Oliver Stone's got this Mr. X guy who represents the military-industrial complex. They want to
Yes.
keep a state of hostility between America and the Soviets and America and Cuba. And Kennedy was this dove who wanted to diffuse the whole situation. Therefore, that's why they got rid of him. So if that were the case, why did the Warren Commission go out of its way to exonerate Cuba? Why did it go out of its way to exonerate the DGI, the Cuban Secret Service, and Castro? If anything, they would have tried to link Oswald to Cuba, wouldn't they?
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
It's a similar World War, though. I mean, you're talking about.
yeah, but that's what they want, isn't it? Don't they want World War III? Don't they want another American invasion of Cuba? Wasn't that the whole point of framing this pro Castro Marxist sympathizer for an assassination he didn't commit? What was the point of this?
There's one thing that I've always found interesting. I give Patrick Collins credit for this. He got me interested in the Mexico City trip, and there was a quote that I read on Mary Farrell's site, Lover's site, and it said, Johnson talked a recalcitrant Warren into heading the commission after he told him what Hoover said about a little incident in Mexico City. What was that little incident?
It was him going to the Cuban and Soviet embassies and trying to apply for a visa to get himself to Cuba. The incident was him trying to go to Cuba because it suggests that there could potentially be elements of foreign state involvement in the assassination.
And what about the fake Oswald there they had pictures of?
They were setups across the street from the Soviet embassy, photographing everybody who went in and went out. But when Oswald arrived, it was dusk. It was getting later in the day. So they didn't have the technology for low light photography at that time. So they sent whatever photos they had of the people who had come in that day, but obviously they weren't Oswald.
But didn't Hoover say he believed Oswald may have been impersonated?
I don't know about that, but I mean, yeah, it's like
You ever
Imad
heard that,
said.
Imad?
They have.
No, that's just Hoover's opinion, though, right? I mean, so what if he said that?
Like we all know, Hoover was kind of a weirdo.
Let's just say for the sake of argument, Hoover, said he believes it. Who would have been impersonating him? I mean,
I can't think of why anybody would want to impersonate Oswald.
Yeah,
well, the implication is somebody else who wasn't Oswald went to the Cuban and Soviet embassies to impersonate him for the purposes of tying the Cuban and Soviet embassies to the assassination of President Kennedy, but they didn't do that.
Have y'all heard of the book Castro's Secrets?
I've heard of it, and I know that there was a show on it recently, but I haven't seen that yet.
Told me to read it. It said apparently the day of the assassination, Castro told him to go turn on the radio. He wanted to listen to around 11:30. He wanted to listen to reports coming out of what was fixing to happen that day. Supposedly, this was told by the Soviet or a Cuban agent that had defected. I just didn't know if y'all had heard that book or read it.
I've heard of it, but I'm not familiar with it. But I mean, it's an anecdotal claim.
Look, of the 3 Cuban embassy employees who testified that Oswald was there, right? One of them was not sure. The other 2, including Sylvia Duran, said, yeah, it was Oswald. He recognized him. And of the 3 Soviet embassy employees, all 3 of them identified him as Oswald. So there's no doubt that it was Lee Harvey Oswald over there.
And while he was there,
Oswald had a twin,
While he was there, he filled out an application for a Cuban visa. This required him to submit passport photographs and fill out the form. So the handwriting on the form matches him, and the passport photographs are obviously of Lee Harvey Oswald. So if somebody else is impersonating him, that person has to look exactly like him and fake his handwriting. But also, when he's in the Cuban embassy, he throws a temper tantrum and makes a big scene, and it causes the ambassador to come out of his office and chastise him.
Did he do that in the Russian one too? Cause a scene?
Yeah, he made a scene in both embassies, but somebody who's
Uh-huh.
there to impersonate somebody else wouldn't do that because they wouldn't want to attract more attention to themselves than absolutely necessary. They wouldn't want to give people a reason to get close to them, look at them closely, talk to them, interact with them, you know? You're
Mhm.
impersonating somebody else. You want to get in and out so that your impersonation can be successful.
Yeah, it's like he went out of his way to make sure that they remembered him.
Exactly.
Why would a double? Why would a phony or a double who looked like Oswald, or not did not look like Oswald, but who tried to impersonate Oswald, do that? You know, it goes against every grain of common sense that we have. I mean,
I got more Mexican City. I'll say that for the House Select when we get to that. But Ahmad, CIA Director McCone admitted to a benign cover-up. So I mean, out of his mouth, benign cover-up.
mhm.
They covered it up. And there it is. He said it. What was they covering up?
They were covering up the fact that, okay, so when you launch an investigation of this nature, a lot of ancillary information comes out that, you know, that is very sensitive to national security. The fact that they tried to assassinate Castro, they tried to kill him 6 times. The CIA tried to assassinate Castro 6 times, known as Operation Mongoose, and a lot of sensitive personnel were involved in that, and those names would have been uncovered. The modus operandi would have been uncovered. So that is what the CIA tried to cover up. They were not trying to cover up the fact that, you know, the JFK assassination was done by some other interested parties and Oswald was a patsy. That's not what they were trying to cover up. They were trying to cover up this aspect of it. You get what I'm saying?
You think that they also was probably covering up that, hey, we dropped the ball.
That's the
Yeah.
FBI. Yeah, the FBI
Yeah,
tried to
we screwed up.
the
We,
fact that they
we
dropped the
messed
ball.
up here, guys.
But the CIA were trying to cover up the fact that they were doing a lot of things in Cuba that they were not supposed to be doing.
Also, they were probably trying to protect signals in human intelligence sources and methods, you know.
Mhm.
We know that the Soviet KGB officials in Mexico City immediately cabled Moscow to tell them about the incident with Oswald having come to the embassy. I mean, since we already know that CIA was set up shop across the street from that embassy, photographing everybody who goes in and out of there, would it shock you to learn that they were also intercepting Soviet signals intelligence and that back in the 1960s, the Warren Commission got to see a full transcript of that discussion between the KGB officials in Mexico City and the KGB officials in Moscow? Like, you can't really publicly reveal, oh, hey, by the way, Soviets were monitoring all your communications.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
McCone
so,
says it's a benign cover up. It's benign. It's a cover up of things that have nothing to do with the assassination of
Yeah,
JFK.
that's it. That's it.
but didn't we have Senator Russell and Representative Boggs initially refused to sign off?
I think Russell and Boggs were the guys who were there the least amount of time, weren't they?
Yeah, they were.
So there
That
you
could be
go.
it.
The guys
Yeah.
who were there the least amount of time didn't want to sign off on it initially, but I mean, eventually they signed off on it, didn't they?
They did sign off on it, and I believe what they had problems with, and which I did too for a long time, was the single bullet theory. I believe that was, if I recall right, they had a
Mm-hmm.
problem with that.
Yeah. Well,
Oh
they
yeah.
didn't. They were just not paying attention. Is all it is. Single
Uh,
bullet theory. If they had listened to Spectre, if they had listened to Bellin, they would have
but
realized that it made perfect sense. The whole thing made perfect sense. It
but it
If
just
they
stopped in midair, right? We've seen that in, Jay in Oliver Stone. Stops in midair for 1.6 seconds, and
No, it doesn't.
no, it does
it
not.
just it just doesn't. I mean, this is the thing. Like, also, if they had just listened to the Bethesda pathologist who told them in the autopsy report, the missile fully transited his neck without making any bony contact or any damage to the thoracic cavity. So right there at the autopsy, they figured out the one bullet went right through him. But I mean, this is the thing about conspiracy theorists, right? If the explanation you come up with requires the bullet to stop in midair for a second and a half and then resume flight, right then and there you should be able to figure out, hey, there's something wrong with this, you know?
Yeah. So we've covered the Warren Commission. Then we had, I've read a little bit about the Clark and Ramsey panels. I don't really know too much about them. Maybe I know one of them was a medical panel, right?
I believe the Clark panel.
Rockefeller Commission, Ramsey, or Clark panel, Ramsey Clark. Is that right?
Yeah. He
And I
was
think
the
Rockefeller was investigating CIA activities, and the other was just purely medical. If I remember right. Okay. Then we get into the HSCA, and Dr. Weck said that this wasn't true. He disputed their findings. He was the only person that had the integrity to dispute what those other 8 doctors said. Right?
Yeah. He's the dissenting opinion, but I mean, his peers in his discipline who examine the exact same evidence disagree with him.
But he's one of the most highly respected, educated men. When he talks, people listen.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely a real deal pathologist, and he definitely has accreditation and experience in his field, and he was recognized by his peers as being one of them. But, they disagree with him, and he's the only doctor who's making these claims. So it's like, what do you want from me? I'm not a doctor.
Bob, what did you think about the London trial and Bugliosi and him went at it? I love that.
Yeah, he really made him sweat there, didn't he? Yeah, I think Rick's problem is that he doesn't want to admit that he's been wrong all these years. It's an ego thing.
I think that's probably it. Yeah.
Yeah,
that was my favorite part because Bugliosi got a few good shots back, but Weck got a few good shots back, but Bugliosi did great. One part that where Bugliosi nailed him at was Weck admitted that it had to come. The shots would have to be within a fraction of a second, and Bugliosi says, "So they're looking at their watch, and they're looking at the car." And what Weck said that, what Weck just said was, time and place. Weck's, trying to do that, but he just sounded foolish when he said that. But I'll say this right: I've watched him enough. If it was a trial that was not had no publicity, I would want that man testifying on my behalf because if there's no publicity on it, man, bar none, he's one of the best.
Well, and Bugliosi also asked him, "Why did you earlier, testify that it was actually a rear, gunshot from the rear?" And Weck says something. He says, "With the available medical evidence at that time."
I remember that.
Immediately, the first question that pops to my mind is, what is the new available medical evidence that we have that would throw a new light on these proceedings, right? So what have you learned now?
1974 when he wrote that article, right? I think when what you're talking about when Bugliosi asked him that, it was from an article that Weck wrote in 1974, just a couple years before that.
Exactly. And the excuse he gave was that I wrote that based on the available medical evidence at that time. Now, since 1967 or 77, whenever he wrote that, what new medical evidence has come to light that would throw a different, interpretation
he believes
on this?
It was like a second floor shooter, if I recall, from that article he wrote.
Sorry, I didn't catch you there.
Thanks for that. Sorry. All right, so now I want to go back to something we was talking a while ago.
Just before we get off the topic,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Cyril Wecht, he's one of these people that sometimes always seems to find involvement in high-profile cases.
Oh yeah, yes.
So like I've seen some of the work he's done on the John Benet Ramsey case, and I actually listened to the Audible version of the book he wrote about the John Benet Ramsey case too, you know? So it seems to me like he's kind of this publicity seeking, attention seeking type person.
I watched I got me thinking, I watched the Forensic Files. I can't remember, but I watched the Forensic Files the other night, and for the defense, Weck was testifying, and for the prosecution, Dr. Lee was testifying. I thought, man, talk about two heavy hitters coming in for a case like that. I remember what I wanted to bring back up, though. I said I was going to touch on the Lopez report. Lopez said he was impersonated. Lopez said he wasn't the one making the phone call. I mean,
Yeah, it's just a typical conspiracy theory prop, right? I mean,
why would
said
Lopez
this,
lie?
he said this.
I mean,
It's all hearsay, you know. I'm sorry, that's not evidence.
why would he lie though? Why would Lopez make that up?
Uh, to get
Who
attention.
knows?
Know, same
Yeah.
reason Paul O'Connor or Cyril Weck.
Get a couple of bucks for an interview, you know?
And I remember in the London trial too that Bugliosi asked him when he said that, and Bugliosi pointed out something about this conspiracy, and he goes, they decided on the parade route on the 18th or 19th, so they've been planning this, and he had, of course, Lopez had no answer for that one when he came back, but they ruled that there was a fourth shot from the null. Remember?
Yeah, the really interesting thing about the HSCA's conclusions is that conspiracy theorists will cite them all the time, but but none of them actually believe it. The HSCA's conclusions is that Oswald fired the 3 shots from the depository that hit and killed Kennedy, and then there was possibly an additional 4th shot from the knoll that missed and didn't hit anything. So nobody believes that. Nobody believes that in real life, that there was 4 shots in total, 3 from Oswald in the depository and 4th from the knoll, another unnamed shooter who didn't hit anything. But the thing is, they arrived at that conclusion erroneously. They misinterpreted the data they had, and very quickly after they arrived at that conclusion, the National Academy of Sciences debunked it shortly thereafter. And then decades later, with better technology, the Sona analyst study debunks it even further. So it was just wrong.
And I remember too, and maybe maybe you know the answer to this. If I recall right, they said that the guy who was shooting in the Nile and Oswald, they weren't even connected. So now you've got 2 shooters that are not connected.
Well, I think it was Scott. I think we were talking about this the last time, right? That if you've actually been to Dealey Plaza and looked at that whole area, you'll realize how absurd the idea is that gunmen could have been hiding behind the picket fence.
Yeah,
the whole area is just open to view, and it's just so small. And
once you're standing there yourself, instantly you realize how stupid it is. I was actually talking to Michael Brownlow one time, and we were standing there right at the right angled corner of the picket fence, right where the pergola is on Elm Street. Mm-hmm. And I said to him, there's somebody standing on the other side of this fence shooting, and then there's people standing right where we're standing right now. And he was saying, yeah. And I said, well, if I'm standing right where I'm standing right now and looking, I can obviously see the person standing there shooting, right? And he goes, yeah, but they don't care. They're going to kill him no matter what. And it's just,
Yeah, I'd like to say something is, me and Oswald was pretty close on the cards as far as qualifying. And you see it in the movie talking about, they don't shoot him coming up Houston, easiest shot and whatever. And then from behind the picket fence, when a vehicle's, first of all, from that, where a shooter from behind the picket fence, they would have been in an unsupported prone position. Their elbow wouldn't have been supported. So you wouldn't have had a clear shot. Second, you're trying to track a vehicle moving at you. That's not going to happen. You're not going to get a headshot tracking a vehicle in an unsupported position with a vehicle moving towards you. That's not going to happen. I mean, Not, I don't care who they are.
Once you've stood there and you've looked at it, it's not a good position, you know.
Hold on.
Sharpshooters typically take elevated high angle positions, not low down flat trajectories, you know.
And they're not going to put guys within 30 yards of each other. I mean, what if the wrong team got called? What if all of them got called?
Exactly.
What
And
if
you
that
got your
bullet?
9
What if
shooters?
that fourth bullet? Sorry. What if that fourth bullet, instead of missing anybody, had actually hit Jackie Kennedy or hit the
Yeah.
upholstery?
Yeah.
Or how does the conspiracy know that these bullets will not be recovered? Like CE 399 was recovered by a civilian. Like, how do you know Secret Service and FBI won't recover bullets from the vehicle? How do you know civilians won't recover bullets from the scene of the crime scene or the Dallas police, you know?
And you
Or
brought that
the
up. Why
doctors
would
at the
you plant?
hospital.
What would, I mean, they always say that it was why would you plant a bullet that you don't even know why would you do that? What would be the point of planting a bullet? I mean, now
Exactly.
you've got an extra bullet. I mean,
How would it
It,
logically make sense?
it's interesting. I was talking to a friend of mine last week or a couple of weeks ago, and he's not even into this stuff. He's not even into the JFK assassination, but he knows the bare basics of it, right? And he actually brought up this point. He said, "What does that planting that fake bullet do? Like, it's like doesn't it point towards a conspiracy rather than away from it?
yeah,
Planting a pristine bullet, a so-called pristine bullet, that draws attention towards the conspiracy,
because how
not
you know
towards
he
Oswald.
missed the
Right?
first shot?
Why would a conspiracist do that? Why would they
Then you would
plant
have
like
4 bullets.
it didn't make sense at all? So this is from
Yeah.
somebody who's outside all this, right? Somebody who's using his common sense.
And one thing too, snipers, even if it was a hit,
Yeah.
they would be 88 yards away. I mean, these guys would be 700-800 meters away taking this kill shot at him. And they're not going to be that close.
Yeah, I mean, less than 100 yards, that's less than the distance you would normally even zero the scope at, you know?
Right, exactly. I mean,
So it's he fell back on his training and he went to the iron sights because at 100 yards or less, you should use the iron sights anyway, right?
I don't think he ever used the scope to begin with. What I think happened was, and it's purely speculation. Because it was like the first shot's the easiest. The first shot, the way it would have come into the building, he would have been almost pointing down in an unsupported position, and I just think he pulled it.
Yep. I think he was pointing it almost down because
Yeah.
of the angle it would have been at. He had his
Mhm.
sight profile either looking through the scope or looking down the iron sights. And as he was trying to track the target, he saw the foliage or the arm of the traffic signal creeping in to that sight picture. And he realized, shit, this target's going to be obscured in a second. I have to shoot now.
Yeah.
And he shot early and he missed.
Yeah. I mean, whether it's breathing control, arm, or trigger squeeze, I just think he pulled it. Personally, I don't think he ever looked through the scope. I mean, because looking through that, it's like looking through a pair of glasses you don't need. He wasn't trained on one, and he may have. He may have used the scope and went to his training. I don't know. But I just personally think he pulled it on the first one.
Those rifles were never intended to take scopes to begin with. This was a value added thing that Klein's did
Yeah.
to increase the value for retail, you know? But also the scope that's on that rifle, it's garbage. It was garbage 60 years ago when they were made. They were bought surplus as a whole lot of them because nobody wanted them to begin with, right? It's not
Right.
even the right type of scope for that kind of rifle. Like that scope really belongs on like a 22 rifle or something like that. It's not the right size at all.
It was a Japanese made scope, wasn't
Yeah, it was Ordnance
Yeah.
Optics or Optics Ordnance. I can't remember which one.
it?
I'll also say something else about that too. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they said he missed twice, and I said, "What do you mean he missed twice?" And he said, well, the second shot, he hit him, in the back. And I said, no, I said, he didn't miss twice. I said, and he goes, yeah, he did. He's aiming for the head. I said, no, he wasn't. I said, when you're trained to fire a rifle, I said, the target that he would have been shooting at would have been about what he would have seen, about the silhouette from his chest up. I said, he was aiming at the base and where his back met the limousine. He wasn't aiming at the head for the third shot. He just got lucky. You don't aim for you don't aim for the head. You don't aim for the shoulder. You aim at the center base of the target, and that's where the target would have lined up. And that particular shot just went a little bit high and caught him in the head.
That's up your alley, brother.
Well, like the upper body silhouette target is a very common target, and everybody is trained on shooting at an upper body silhouette. So you're taught to shoot for the center mass.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, he just got lucky. Hey, things happen, man.
And that's stars. If he had a back brace on, I mean, have him somewhere else. I mean, he just really, he got lucky. I mean, it happens.
It happens, yeah. But I mean, try explaining the concept of luck, coincidence, fortune, circumstance to a conspiracy theorist who thinks that there's like a shadowy cabal of people pulling the strings behind literally everything,
They killed all those
ideological movement.
They silenced all those people, man. They killed hundreds of people. They killed Lee Bowers. They ran him off the road.
What kind of lame conspiracy has to go around killing people for decades to come, man? And
they drugged Lee Bowers in a coffee shop and ran him off the road.
Oh, why would they kill Lee Bowers anyway?
Why? Yeah.
Because Lee Bowers seen the shooters and he could identify them.
Well, not according to his testimony. He didn't see any shooters there.
And at the time of the shooting, Lee Bowers' back was to the plaza because he was throwing the switch to stop rail traffic across the overpass there. So at the actual moment of the shooting, he didn't really see anything.
They waited 3 years and drugged him in a coffee shop and ran him off the road.
Yeah. Give him plenty of time to tell whatever he has to tell to whoever he has to tell it to,
What was his testimony? Actually said at the time of the shooting, it just seemed like something out of the ordinary occurred. Well, yeah, I'm sure it did. You probably heard screaming.
Yeah. He probably saw people running around,
He actually did see two people behind the picket fence, but they were a distance from each other, and they probably didn't even know each other. They're probably just spectators,
Johnny Carnes asked me that one time, and he said, does it not bother you they didn't locate those men? I said, not particularly. I mean, there was how many thousands of people down there? I mean, how are they going to know who they are? I mean, no, I'm not particularly bothered they didn't find out who two men are standing behind a fence.
And it was railway employees all over that bridge. We stood on that rail bridge and looked. Like, you can obviously see behind the picket fence,
God, when I stood there on the trip where SM Holland was, and I looked and I could see, I was like, oh my God, you can see everything all the way back there. And I don't think SM Holland was lying. I think he really believed he seen that. And he also thought Jackie climbed in the front seat. I just think he made a mistake.
It's the fallible nature of human perception. I one time participated in this thing on the internet. It was part of a study they did, and when they were done the study, they released the video publicly. Basically, it's a group of people standing around in a circle. It's about 6 people, okay? Half of them are dressed all in white, half of them are dressed all in black. And they are rotating around in this circle clockwise, passing a basketball back and forth between them, right? So at the start of the video, it tells you, count how many times the basketball bounces. So you're watching this video and you're counting the bounces, okay? The video ends and the question is, okay, how many times did the basketball bounce? 16. Okay, correct, 16. Now, did you see the gorilla? And I said, no, what gorilla? What the hell are you people talking about? And then the video says, okay, go back, rewind the video, and watch it again. This time, don't pay any attention to the basketball at all. Just watch the video. And as I was watching it, sure enough, while these people are moving around, bouncing a basketball, a guy comes out in a gorilla costume, stands right in front of them in the middle of the frame of the video, pounds his chest in stereotypical gorilla fashion, and walks off screen.
Are you serious?
What? I did not see that. What this study determined is that 50% of all people who watch that video do not see the gorilla. You're just as likely to see it as to not see it. So always keep that in mind when you're evaluating eyewitness accounts. The task I was given was count the bounces of the basketball, not keep a lookout for anything that seems weird or out of place, you know? When SM Holland was there, the task he had in mind was observe the parade, not keep a lookout around for anything you see that's weird or out of place, right? So anything eyewitness accounts can tell you outside of what they were directly there to do is usually just incidental, you know? Would SM Holland have seen that gorilla? He's just as likely to have as to have not.
And you got to remember, he was an older man.
Yeah.
His eyes were not the eyes of a 25-year-old. I'm not taking any shots at him. I just think, he's confused, mistake, whatever. I believe he's sincere. I just believe he got it wrong.
Yeah, just like Scott said, I mean, just take Harold. What's his name? The black guy who was
Harold Norman.
Harold Norman, yeah. I think it was him that testified that the president actually stood up in his car.
Yes,
that never happened.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Marianne Moorman and what was the other lady?
Jean Hill.
Jean Hill. One of them testified that there was a little dog in the car with.
Yes, I remember that too.
So I mean, there you go. Like eyewitness accounts. The Titanic. Hundreds of people witnessed the sinking, and it took us a century to verify that it broke in half. It was only a century later almost when they found it that they're like, oh, it actually did break in half. Okay, those eyewitness accounts are more credible.
If there was a plot to kill a president, I mean, wouldn't it be much easier for a plane to go down or helicopter crash or
yes, 100%.
than to have shot down in front of thousands of people and the sniper
is expert at the use of poisons.
Poison. I mean, heart attack.
Bring the plane down in the middle of the ocean, and that way you don't even have to fake an autopsy because there's no body to fake it on to begin with.
I still don't see the idea behind killing a president who was not going to be in power for more than 5 years. I still don't see that.
That's a good point too, because when you killed him, tried to kill him before. I mean, because at that time you got to think about something too. They didn't know that Goldwater was going to be the Republican nominee, so for all they knew, it was going to be could have been a rematch between him and Nixon. I mean, there was no guarantee that he was going to win. I mean,
there was no guarantee Kennedy was going to win.
Yeah.
They didn't. No guarantee at all.
Yeah, there's no guarantee at all. I mean, and you're going to kill. And they like to point. He was going to pull him out of Vietnam. No, he wasn't pulling out of Vietnam.
No, that's that's bogus.
I mean,
going to pull out of Vietnam.
Look, I'm a nerd. I have a university degree. I've taken American history courses at the university level. I'm telling you, any person who tries to present Jack Kennedy as some peacenik liberal does not know what they're talking about. Anybody who tries to present Earl Warren as an establishment conservative does not know what they're talking about. They just don't.
Yeah, he was a Cold Warrior. I mean, this guy
through.
I mean, He was a war hero. I mean, this was not some weak, soft man by no means at all.
No, not at all. And I mean, what exactly was it that he was doing that he had to get assassinated for? Jack Kennedy greenlit a covert operation to overthrow the government of Cuba. Jack Kennedy oversaw covert activity in Latin America and Southeast Asia for years. What exactly, what is this guy doing that makes him such a threat to the military industrial complex that he has to get murdered?
The whole
LBJ
confusion,
was going to get dropped from the ticket, so LBJ was behind it.
the whole
LBJ was
confusion.
dropped.
Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
Confusion behind
Y'all afraid to catch y'all.
the National Security Memorandum, which talks about the withdrawal of troops from Vietnam.
1063, yes.
That, yeah, 63. Yeah. So that was something conditional. So
And it was only a
South
small
Vietnamese
amount.
government. Yeah, it was something conditional. And
Yes.
the condition was that the South Vietnamese government get its act together, which it didn't.
Yeah.
Right.
It was a
It never-
very, very small amount. I mean, it was, like 5% or something. I mean, it was not
Like
many.
about 1,000 troops. It was about 1,000 troops.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're right.
And-
it was under
and
some
again, it
kind
was-
and these conditions were not easy, as I recall. I mean, it was
No,
pretty.
look, see, because even LBJ, when he came to power, he said, "I'm not going to send American boys out there to do a job that Vietnamese boys should be doing for themselves." And yet he escalated the war. Why? Because the Vietnamese boys were not doing their job. So it was all conditional. You see.
Yeah. I mean, it could have been the same thing. Had Kennedy not, had not been killed, it could have been, hey, JFK, how many kids have you killed today instead of.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
As a matter of fact, McNamara was reporting from Saigon, and he told the White House, he told the Oval Office that these people are going to collapse at any minute. Okay, there's no way the communists are kicking their butts all over their place. We need to help them.
Yeah, I
So-
wonder why it is that the communists were so apt to, fight to the death, and the South Vietnamese would just drop their weapons and run. I've often wondered what the deal was there.
It's because the communist forces in the north were united in reason, in purpose, in a way that the forces in the south were not. Most the Vietnamese whose interests America were representing in the Vietnam War was a tiny minority of the population. It was the urban, educated elite. That's who they were representing. Most of Vietnam was Buddhist. Most of them were agrarian, rural people living an agriculturally based lifestyle. And they had a very powerful nationalistic message under Ho Chi Minh. Ho Chi Minh had fought he's fighting the Americans now. Before that, he fought the French. Before that, he fought the Japanese. They want to throw off their colonial masters, the French, and become an independent country. But the problem is, America and France are best friends and have always been best friends since the days of the American Revolution. So America was going to shore up France, and when France left, they kind of just stepped in to fulfill that role,
Yeah,
I mean, the North Vietnamese army and the Viet Cong had a strong cadre of troops who had a lot of combat experience. They defeated the French at Dien Bien Phu and places like that, right? So they had a lot of experience under their belt. They had good leadership. General, whatever his name is.
Vo Zop.
Huh?
Vo Nguyen Zop. That's the Vietnamese general you are thinking of. He's the general who was at
Giap, yeah, GIAP. Yeah, he's considered a very proficient general.
He is.
Ho Chi Minh gave very strong political leadership, so there was a lot of motivation there. But the South Vietnamese government was corrupt. It was oppressing the Buddhist majority in the country, so the army was not motivated to fight.
Yeah,
we're digressing here. I mean, but the point I'm trying to make
it reminds me of the Taliban in a way in Afghanistan. They fought the Soviets throughout the 80s and been involved in civil war. Those guys are still 20 years later fighting. But they've often parallel there. And one thing I thought too about this conspiracy, Uh, how long would it take to organize this? And who would be the person that would make the call? I mean, somebody's got to decide this.
I mean, you would have a group of senior operators sitting around that table, and they would hatch this plan, and they would say, hey, by the way, you know, if any of us ever get caught for this, we're all dead. And every single one of those people would have to agree to go along with it. You know, bureaucrats are notoriously spineless, cowardly people. They're very well known for that, for being self-serving and unwilling to stick their neck out. So, I mean, I just don't believe it.
One of
Somebody brought
the
up a point. Sorry, go ahead.
no, you go ahead. You go ahead.
No, go
Somebody
ahead.
brought up a point on
No,
the
I'm not.
forum.
No, I'm not. You go ahead.
Somebody brought up a point on the forum that the Manhattan Project, and you know, Operation Valkyrie, the plan to assassinate Hitler,
Yeah.
that involved hundreds and thousands of people, and yet the secret didn't leak out. But it's a false comparison because those were people who were specifically, you know, in like, you know, they had a specific function and they belonged to a specific sector, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, you know, in the Manhattan Project, for example, most of them are scientists. I'm sure you had a few bureaucrats there, some security guards. So there was a specialized group of people. But here, for the Kennedy assassination to have worked, look at the number of people who would have been involved: cab driver, a bus driver, a ticket seller at the theater, Johnny Brewer,
A
Ruth
shoe
Payne.
salesman,
Yeah, shoe
uh,
salesman, Ruth
a
Payne,
waitress on her way to her part-time minimum wage job.
Roy Truly, what's his Fraser's sister, Linnie Mae Randall. Like, I mean, how many people seriously? And then the autopsists, three
And
different
that was
sets
what
of
I was actually going
autopsists.
to say is one of the best lines from JFK was when the guy was, I think, was playing Bill Broussard. How in the hell are you going to keep a conspiracy going on between the mob, the FBI, the CIA, the Secret Service, Army Intelligence, and who the hell knows what else when you can't keep a secret between 12 people in a room?
Exactly.
But we got leaks everywhere. I mean,
Yeah.
and think about it. Somebody would have talked by now. I mean, deathbed confession, letter, whatever. Somebody would have talked. I mean, you can't, you know, that's just too good of a secret.
If you were involved in something like that, you'd want the credit.
Of course,
You'd want your place in history, you know? I would.
absolutely.
If and especially if you're involved in that and you're looking around and you're seeing all these other people getting murdered, you're like, "Oh shit, I need to spill the beans now before they get to me," you know?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you're right. Eventually, somebody, it's kind of like almost, you know, serial killer murder types. It would have got to somebody that they would have wanted to be known for this. Hey, yeah, I did this.
Yeah.
James Files, and he admitted it.
James
Well,
Files, yeah.
I guess that settles it then, right?
Did you know? He's from Alabama, and I was talking to Mark the night. Did John McAdams recently die?
Yes, I did know that. Yeah.
Oh wow! Yeah, I did not know that. And he mentioned that, and he said he died a few months back, and I had no idea John McAdams died.
Yeah, he passed away.
And
Unfortunate.
you know, he was the one that you know, put me in a severe depression because I started reading his website,
Hey
and
man, I know that feeling, bro.
my heart started sinking, and I was like, no, 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 this, no, and I was like, no, and I was like, this kid, no, and I was like, oh my god, and I was like,
Yeah,
this can't be true, and I was almost ready to cry, and it was like telling a
I've been
fortune there's
there.
no Santa Claus.
Hey, excuse me a minute, guys. I'm gonna be right back.
I mean, I've been there, but hey, there is no Santa Claus, right? And that's part of the maturation process. It's growing up and understanding the world and using your reason and logic to to understand. There is no Santa Claus. There can't be a Santa Claus. It's not possible without magic, you know?
That's one of my friends he loves the Kennedy assassination. He goes, he said, I just can't, I don't get it. He goes, a few years ago, you was deep in conspiracy and Oswald was innocent. And I said, I started meeting people and talking to them, and they started pointing other evidence to me. And I said, eventually I had to be honest with myself. And one thing too, I was only reading and watching conspiracy stuff because that was the most interesting stuff. I mean, it's going to be boring for a 24-year-old communist to get off a lucky shot at president. I mean,
so a bit of a digression here. I'm actually in a group that Chris is in about the American Civil War, and I sometimes post videos in that group from a guy on YouTube who talks about the Civil War, talks about history, et cetera, et cetera. He used to be a tour guide in New Orleans, and he said that if you're a tour guide in New Orleans, you're going to mostly be doing tours about haunted houses and vampires, because that's what people actually want to see.
Yeah.
He's like, honestly, my favorite tour to do is a cemetery tour, because the kind of people that want to go to a cemetery tour, those people are way more interested in like the actual history of New Orleans as opposed to all this flashy fake stuff, ghosts and vampires. And that's the thing. It's like people want the flashy, sexy conspiracy. They don't want the boring, cut and dry truth.
I think you made a post the other night. I didn't read it because I was advised. My moderators told me I need to take about 10 days off because of explosive outbursts.
We'll bypass that. We'll digress from that for a moment.
I felt like after I went off on, I felt like a coach, or I felt like Nick Saban out on the field, and the two moderators, they was pulling me, the assistant coach was pulling me back. I mean, it was just like went off. So I had to get off. I was supposed to return Sunday, so I needed a break from that.
Well, like it's a bit of a digression, but the point I'm trying to make is people always want the flashy, entertaining. It's just human nature.
Of course. I mean, what more interesting? Maybe it was you that said it, or one of y'all said it one time, or I can't remember who it was really. But it's the human mind craves a mystery, and I believe that. I mean,
yeah. I mean, go for it.
No, go ahead.
I'm that kind of person. I enjoy a good whodunit. I enjoy a good murder mystery. I love to play like murder mystery type video games. I enjoy that kind of thing. I like Agatha Christie, Encyclopedia Brown. I like all that stuff. Matlock, Perry Mason.
Was stolen.
Sorry?
You got to see that interview that I had that guy the other night, Scott.
With who? Who was it?
Oh, he's a buddy. He's in the Civil War group, and I had to set it up because the first time I was sitting up here, I got to, I don't know, it probably came across that I liked Trump too much, but so I reversed it and was totally neutral and listened to him explain to me how the election was stolen from Trump.
Oh God, yeah. Let's not get into that. Sorry, Imad. I think you had something you were about to say.
Yeah, I was going to say that it was actually the conspiracy aspect of this whole thing that actually drew me into this subject. And if there was no mystery, if there was no conspiracy, I probably wouldn't even be reading about it, right?
I actually commented on that today on Facebook right before I got on with you guys. If it wasn't for the conspiracy theorist culture, there never would have been Oliver Stone's JFK. If there had never been Oliver Stone's JFK, my life would have been significantly different. I would be a different person.
Garfield. Who killed McKinley?
Charles Guiteau. I can't remember which one it was.
I was talking to Dennis earlier today, and I brought this up, and I'm gonna get your opinion on it. If Kennedy had been Eisenhower, or if he'd been a 75 or 80-year-old man with an old wife, you think there would still be that kind of mystique, or
No.
him being young and nice looking, beautiful wife, small children, that puts a lot of the mystique on it.
Exactly. 100% it does.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not trying to take away from somebody older losing their life. I was thinking it'd been an old man getting killed. It would, you know, because he represented a hope and, you know, youth and vitality, and just, you know, wiped away in the blink of an eye.
Definitely. That's one of the elements that keeps the story alive. It's the elements of tragedy. You know, when somebody leaves our life for whatever reason, they kind of get frozen in time the way we remembered them. You know what I mean? And you might cross paths with that person years later and you can
Yeah.
recognize them, but you can see they're different now, you know? They're
Yeah, it's
different
hard.
from how they were when you knew them last.
You know, he'd be what, 105 now or something. I mean, it's hard for me to
Something
grasp.
like that.
Yeah, I mean, because he's still forever, you know, 43 or 42 years old or whatever Kennedy was, and he probably would even lived a long life. I mean, you know,
Yeah, he
he
was very sick, you know?
yeah, I mean, um,
I mean, him getting assassinated in terms of like his place in, I mean, obviously Jack Kennedy was always going to have a place in history, but the assassination just kind of like it puts him over the top, you know? Now he is lionized and idolized, a martyred hero of the American Republic.
and go back to that too, though. You know, it could have been totally different. I mean, he could have been remembered as Lyndon Johnson's remembered now. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, if he got embroiled in Vietnam, I mean, he could have. I mean, he could have done anything different Johnson did. I mean, except, I mean, you're either going to get out or you're going to keep sending more troops.
Yeah. And the whole time he was in office, what did he do? Send more troops, right?
And
So it's
I
like,
watched a thing with him tonight, and they said he kept having a reoccurring nightmare when he was president. He was swimming, and his head kept going underwater, and he couldn't. He was dry, couldn't get above water. And they said that was his subconscious telling him he was in over his head.
yeah, yeah, I can totally believe that.
This is LBJ.
100%.
And I mean, and he
That's what
may have ended
LBJ.
up, you know, being a great president had it not. But you think about the things that he did, you know, by signing the Civil Rights Act and, you know, the Medicare. You know, if he didn't get involved in Vietnam, this guy would have been beloved.
Yeah, it's all overshadowed by Vietnam, a war he didn't even really want to begin with, you know? It's a coincidence of history, the turn of fate, you know, the wheel of fortune.
And I remember thinking that he didn't want to be remembered as the first American president to lose a war.
Yeah. He wouldn't have been, but still, you know, I can
Yeah, I mean,
understand the perception.
um, yeah, this has been fun. I had one with Dennis this morning. It was great. He showed me some
Oh, nice.
pictures of, some pictures I'd never seen before. It was really fun.
All right,
You
yeah,
know,
sounds good, bro.
well, you said you watched Matt's. Yeah, I'm glad I could let him have his say. I was surprised he did it though, you know, because Matt kept telling me, "I don't do interviews. I don't do interviews. I don't do interviews." And I guess he thought I was going to come battle. You know, I wasn't coming to battle with him. I was, you know, I was going to be chill and, but he, I hope he had fun with it.
Yeah, I enjoyed that interview. I enjoy all your interviews. I always like to hear, you know, the voice of people I interact with on the internet, see what they actually sound like in real life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some of you guys have been great to talk to. I mean, all the ones that I've, you know, people I've met. I think Bill's brother, the Bigfoot hunter, that was one of the funnest ones I've ever did. I loved that interview.
Awesome.
And the other one I did, I started breaking it down some because it was so long. Is Jerry Dealey did one with me, and it's about 2+ hours. And I've started
Yeah.
breaking it down in clips because Jerry, when he gives his spiel, man, if you're a long gunman, you're going to come out almost believing in a conspiracy. And if you believe in a conspiracy, you're almost going to be a long gunman. I mean, the way he works it, I mean, is a testament. I mean, I love listening to Jerry.
Yeah, me too. He's very knowledgeable about this case.
I mean, the way I mean, is getting in and getting out, and he'll be like, there's about how it's impossible. You sneak in. He goes, yeah, but there was 10 minutes that the elevator was left open, so it's possible. Wait a second, what?
Well, I mean, there's always going to be unknowns, but we have to try to ask ourselves what can actually be supported by evidence. And in the places where there's gaps, you have to be careful not to speculate too much about those gaps,
And I will say too, I got to give Matt his props because every other person who's a conspiracy theorist has refused to come on.
Well,
I've asked
Matt,
everyone. Johnny Carnes said he had too much going on. William Kelly said, "What is your first 10 questions going to be?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "I don't do it like that." I said, it just depends." He goes, "Well, what will your first question be?" I said, "How are you doing today?"
well, Matt would reject the title conspiracy theorist, which, by the way, Matt,
he did. I don't know what I'm
if you're
supposed to call it.
listening to this, you are a conspiracy theorist, okay? You don't get to redefine what words mean in order to suit your agenda.
And I had to say the killer instead of the alleged killer or Oswald. Okay, whatever, the killer. And if that's but he did do a good job because he went back there and edited it out, pauses and stuff, and cut because it was originally almost 2 hours. But he did a good job editing that down. So I appreciate Matt did that. But yes, Matt's conspiracy theorist, and Thursday night's going to be fun.
Oh yeah, I'm eagerly awaiting that. That's going to be good times.
I brought this up. I started doing this thing. I started videotaping it in the Civil War group to Dave the other day, and he liked it. I started having these what I call roundtable discussions or something. You just bring up a topic, 7 or 8 people get in a room, and they just go over it. I think that'd be a good idea.
Yeah, if we can get a couple of us together, sure.
Yeah, pick out one topic, the jacket, or whatever topic you wanted. And yeah, it's I have a lot of fun doing that in those groups. We'd have to get some CTs in there, but I think we can find a few to join in. Hey, like I booted out of that Oswald's a Patsy group.
Yeah, I mean, if you're around long enough, you get booted out of a bunch of groups. It's a badge of honor at this point.
I was usually talking to you in there, and they kicked me out there. And I just noticed, I was like, why am I not getting notifications anymore? And I got ejected, and I was like, I hardly ever say anything.
Well, I've probably been ejected too, but we'll see. I don't know why they would kick you out, but not me. But who knows?
Because Fred had just entered right when I got kicked out, and I was, I hardly commented all in there.
No idea. One of us goes, another one comes. It doesn't matter.
I mean, I've been kicked out of a bunch. There was one that I was in. I got kicked out of because I guess I got blocked by somebody. That's the one that. Oh, I think it's Scott Bale or something. The one who said he's a math teacher, said he just proved the single bullet theory, and that James Meadows and Chris Sanders is in, and I think Chris Sanders is the only one you've ever blocked, right, Scott? But
I've only ever blocked like a handful of people. Christopher Sanders was one of them because honestly, I interacted with that guy a bunch of times, and I was just like, you know what? I don't think you are mentally well. And I think that further interaction with you is not good for your own well-being. So I'm just going to block you for your own good. And
if he's acting or if he really believes it.
Who knows, but either way, it doesn't matter. And the other two guys I blocked was because they doxed people. They released like their home phone numbers and their home address.
You know who I missed that used to be in there a lot, and he used to he just disappeared. The last time I talked to him, he emailed me the national championship game for Alabama played Ohio State is Lee Abbott.
I don't know. I think I might have. That name sounds familiar, but
yeah, you remember Lee Abbott because he used to always, and I thought it was serious, but he would always go with Patrick Collins. Well, I didn't realize him and Patrick Collins was really good friends because Lee Abbott used to get muted all the time for the stuff he said to Patrick, but they're actually really tight. Lee, his profession by trade is he is a gambler in Las Vegas.
Oh, interesting. Okay, that sounds like fun.
Yeah, I mean, you remember he just also just quit posting, and I don't know really what happened to him.
I don't know either. But my phone is getting to the bottom end of its
Yeah,
battery here.
I'll
So
get some stuff. And guys, thanks for coming on. I mean, I've had both of y'all have had great
pleasure.
interviews. I enjoy talking to y'all, and we'll have to get together again. And I guess I'll see both of y'all on the forums.
thanks for having me, bro.
Just let us know when it's uploaded, okay?
Yeah, I've got probably about 5 or 6 to go in front of you. I'm a little behind right now, but I will get those up. I got nothing to do. I'll probably have it up this afternoon and have it posted. And I think this will be pretty good. But yeah, thanks a lot, guys. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, thanks
Thanks for
Chris.
having me, bro.
Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, thanks, Imad. Good talking to you.
Yeah, keep in touch, guys.